From Reminder Media, this is Stay Paid, a sales and marketing podcast on a mission to help you close more deals and retain more business. Hosted by the VP of Marketing, Josh Stake, and Reminder Media's president, Luke Acree. So get ready to hear the golden nuggets that will allow you to live a life of freedom tomorrow, but only if you take action today.
Welcome to another episode of Stay Paid, Luke. It's Christmas Eve.
Is this a silver dollar episode?
It is a silver dollar episode.
Okay, I just because you didn't say it in the intro, I gotta check myself. See, guys, the audience listening to this, you got to realize we film a lot of these in a day sometimes. So if Josh doesn't say silver dollars, I'm like, am I in a real episode here? Or is this like a
Merry Christmas, everybody?
Seriously, Happy New Year.
Yeah, man, we made it. We did 2020.
Yeah, we did. Well, I don't know how we did in 2020, but we did it.
We absolutely did it. No, we're super excited. We're so thankful for everybody this year. I mean, this is like the greatest Christmas gift in the world. It's just our listeners. And like, this sounds...
this is getting very sentimental.
It is. Like, this is super exciting. Like, the feedback that we've gotten this year from listeners
it's unreal.
Just been so exciting. And the tips and the actual watching people do what we talk about on the show, what we've learned, because this is all stuff that we've tested and we've tried and we've learned. But even more importantly, like what our guests are coming on and coaching people to do and hearing people take that, apply it to their business. We had somebody send a review in that they 3x their revenue by doing what they've learned here on the podcast. So it's so exciting. So this episode, we're actually going to take time, and I have to call attention to the outfits because this is the holiday episode. So head on over to staypaidpodcast.com to see the video. I am in my full snowman suit from head to toe. I've got my Golden Nugget custom chucks on for the holidays. Luke is wearing a surfing Santa t-shirt.
You're going to love it.
He's representing the West Coast crew as well as his Santa hat.
Yes. I don't know what you're going to think of the Santa hat, but you're going to love the t-shirt. So check that out.
I don't know why we insist on dressing up.
Yeah.
Like something
amazing because it's amazing when you guys
It was so funny. Josh comes out of his office and Anne-Marie looks at him and she helps run our live. But she looks at him, she goes, well, just another normal day in the office, huh? Him dressed up.
Last time it was the Mario suit. Now I'm walking out in a snowman suit, but that's cool. We do it all for the content. So make sure you drop a comment on our YouTube video. Let us know that you saw this. We really appreciate it. But hey, we want to go through, speaking of all these great interviews that we had, these golden nuggets that have been dropped by our guests throughout the year. We went through, we pulled every guest that we had in 2020, and we really looked at it. And we wanted to bring you guys the Golden-est Nuggets of the year. So even though this is a silver dollar episode, we're going to be sharing our favorite golden nuggets from our interviews this year. And what an incredible year it has been. I pulled the guest list. I'm trying to think like, okay, who do we have this year?
Yeah, I mean, every episode, it's just
my
it was
gosh,
hard to
the
choose.
guest list was absolutely insane this year. So super excited. Thank you to all of our guests who came onto the episode. But we're going to share with you our favorites. I guess we'll call them the ones that resonated with us the most over the year, both from a guest standpoint and then what they talked about. I'll say the first one that I have, I'll go first. We're going to go back and forth. First one that I have on my list is Baer. He is episode 151. Jay is probably, I went back and listened to this episode. We probably source his stories more than anybody. And I didn't even realize it until I went back through and listened to the episode. Oh, that's right. We get that story from
he was incredible, man.
Yeah, he talks all about utility. So the idea of utility is this idea that you have to be the most useful person or the most helpful person in your profession. And it's really this golden rule of information. It requires that you give away what you know for free, one bite at a time. So some of the stories that he shared, one that we talk about a lot, we talk about this guy in Florida. He's a real estate agent in Florida. His name is Joe. He only works with sellers. And he has this niche of like $200,000 homes, like $200,000 to $400,000 homes. And so what he does is in order to get for sale by owners, because the $200,000 price range is a tricky price range for sellers. There's not a ton of money to be made, especially after you pay a real estate agent. So he sat down and wrote a 65-page book on how to sell your home in Florida by yourself. And he puts it out there for free. And so most people would say, well, that's crazy. Why would you give people that information? He said the juxtaposition of that is most agents say, I know everything. You can't possibly sell your house by yourself. You have to use me. No, he puts it all out there for free. And then he says what happens is by the time people get to page about 13 in that book, they go, holy crap, this is hard.
I don't know anything.
I can't do this on my own. I'm going to call Joe. And like the idea of putting that information out there and giving that away for free, whether it's in your FAQs, we talk about posting your FAQs on your social media. We use that example a lot. We use the example of the orthodontist who calls their clients before, the day before.
I think it was podometrist.
Podometrist?
Yeah, I think it was like a podiatrist.
No, it was oral surgery. Was
it oral surgery?
Yeah.
I thought it was a foot surgeon or whatever you call those people.
Well, foot to mouth. I don't know. Put your foot in your mouth. That's a thing.
There's another.
But from that, and I hate to keep, but from that, we also use the example of the light switch all the time.
Oh, yeah, the light switch one is
it's doing these things that will create an experience with your clients that's completely unexpected that will then launch that talk trigger. Because he wrote multiple books, and one of them was Talk Triggers also. And it's this idea that nobody writes a story about a light switch that works because a light switch is just supposed to work. So no one ever shares their experience if you've just done your job. It's going above and beyond that extra mile. And those were some, I think, the golden nuggets that we took away from Jay's interview.
No, yeah, Josh is right. I mean, I reference him all the time. I thought his principles and his stories were so powerful. I think it leads into one of the guests that I felt obviously brought so much value and is worth a re-listen, which was Tom Ferry. And you're talking about this idea of utility and giving out what you know, and ultimately what you're doing is trying to build trust. And what Tom is all about is, in order to scale your business, you ultimately have to scale trust. You have to scale trust within the minds of your community, trust within the minds of your sphere, your database, however you want to look at it. And some of the things that I reference from Tom all the time now, and I work it into even our marketing because I thought he brilliantly explained it, is that the more frequent you can be in front of somebody, right? The more consistent you can be in front of somebody, the more familiar they become with you. And so if you can get out and think about this in terms of your marketing, right, specifically, and think about your brand, the more you can put your brand in front of people, the more familiar they become with your brand. Yeah. And I always then take it to, well, that familiarity is the comfort level. Because when you meet someone for the first time, you're not comfortable with them. You're not comfortable with them. They're not comfortable with you because it's the first time you're meeting. But the more you meet with that person, the more comfort comes into the relationship. So as a business, you want to be frequently in front of people. But the other thing that was so great about what Tom talked about, the reason why I wanted to bring his episode up, is because one of the mistakes in the business is everybody preaches one way to do something. Yeah. And it's like they have their way, and that's what they preach from the heavens, right? They become evangelical about that. And I think it's awesome to be evangelical about your message. I think that applies in so many areas, but it leads people into the trap of believing that there's only one right way. And Tom talks about, and obviously everybody knows Tom Ferry's father is Mike Ferry, and Mike Ferry is one of the godfathers of real estate coaching, and he is huge on cold calling. And Tom says, yeah, cold calling is something that you can do and should do in certain areas, but there's a whole nother avenue within marketing, and there's so many different strategies within marketing that you can apply to your business. There's not one way to do it, but the key is this, and here's the golden nugget. Run the plays that work, and Tom, quoting him, stop doing dumb shit. Basically, is, look, you have to run the plays that work, and the only way you're going to be able to do that and be able to scale your business and scale the trust and all that good stuff is you have to execute, you have to track what you're doing, track and know your numbers, and then learn to adapt. Learn to really go in and go, okay, what's working, what's not working, because your numbers will tell you everything. And so it's all about scaling trust, like Jay Baer talks about. And a way you're going to be able to do that is running the plays that actually work. The only way you know the plays that work is that you actually execute, track your numbers, and then adapt. Yeah. No, I love the idea of there is no wrong way to generate a lead. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely love that. That was episode 117. So if you want to go back and check out Tom Ferry's full episode, head on over to staypaidpodcast.com. Check out episode 117, or you can get it in Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. The next one that I have, this one's going to be a little bit of a surprise. So I don't know that people are going to think of this one necessarily because it's not a big name. It's a huge name. It's not it's not a Tom Ferry. It's a Tamara Johnson. No, Tamara Johnson was episode 171. Tamara is an employee of ReminderMedia, team member on ReminderMedia's team. And we have been trying to get Tamara on the podcast since we started having guests on the podcast. And it'd always be like, I'm not sure.
Well, over quarantine, she actually got on a panel with a group of other creatives, and it almost like I was like, all right, Tamara, if you're doing it for that group, you have to do it for us. So we got her on the podcast, and the great thing about Tamara was she started her career at ReminderMedia literally as her business failed. Like she had created this business, an absolute fantastic business called Lily Glow Boutique, and it's jewelry and clothes. Right, and it's fashion stuff. I don't understand fashion. I'm wearing a snowman suit.
Trust me, man. You understand fashion.
It's gorgeous stuff. And she put her heart and soul into this thing, and she would go out and sell this product at flea markets. And she got to the point where she's like, "I'm going all in. I'm going to open a brick and mortar." She cashes out her retirement. She creates opens this store, this brick and mortar store, and then has all of the things happen that every business goes through and starts realizing, oh my gosh, she did her business plan. She did everything right. And then it doesn't succeed, right? She has to shut it down within, I think, a year. I think a year later, she has to shut it down. And the attitude that Tamara has from that experience, from the standpoint of, number one, that's not the end. Like, that is not the end of my story. And the willingness to take a risk. She actually said when she was debating on whether or not to cash out her retirement and do this thing, she said, you know what? When you look back and you read those books about the business owners and the people that made it, there's always that story.
Yep.
They took that risk, they did that thing, and now look at them now. And so like her attitude towards that and her whole attitude towards like not being afraid to then take a job after being an entrepreneur and what she's looking to accomplish and just the ideas and the lessons on failure was one of the most powerful episodes I think we've had. We actually had one of our biggest fans, or like definitely most dedicated commenters on YouTube, Alicio. Thank you, Alicio. He commented, he said, I think this is going to be your most watch/listen to podcast because Tamara is still in the entrepreneurial trenches. He really identified with what she's going through because him and his wife used their home equity to start a business in 2008. The economy tanks and they closed their business after 1 year. So I think a lot of people can relate to what Tamara talked about. I definitely go out and check that episode out.
What was so great about that story is that we all hear failure stories, but it always comes with the success at the end. And her story is unique in the sense of like, she hasn't had necessarily what you would consider listening to it, the big win.
Yeah.
Right. But it talks about the mindset that she has today coming out of that failure and still trying to achieve her big win. And I think what we all learn in life is that life is not really about big wins. And I mean, what even qualifies to be a big win? And the mindset that you're talking about that she talks and kind of inspires or aspires to and then inspires other to is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I was blown away by that episode as well. The episode that I chose next when it comes to like golden nuggets or things that I took away is actually, and maybe I'm biased because he's a local guy here in Philly, but it's Mike McCann, the real estate man.
Anybody watching that will be as biased.
Yeah.
He's a fascinating personality.
He
He's absolutely awesome.
So top realtor in Philly for like the last 30 years. Unreal. I mean, think about that for a second. This gentleman has been number one in Philadelphia, one of the major cities of the world, for 30 freaking years. So I think he has some wisdom to share. And what was so interesting, right, about his podcast, and I told my brother after I interviewed him, I said, man, you got to listen to this episode. Because what I found amazing about Mike McCann and his attitude is he did not come in any type of mindset of knowing what I'm doing. Like almost the episode, he kept saying, I don't really know what I'm doing. And I think that is such a golden nugget going, here's the number one guy for 30 years presenting this. Willing to basically go, I don't really know. And when we talked about marketing, he goes, one of the great things about me is I've been willing to try new things. I've been willing to evolve and try and track. And you heard me mention Tom Ferry's episode, right? So a big theme is this idea of, hey, you're executing, you're trying, you're tracking. So willing to try. But what he came back to was two key golden nuggets that I took away. One is, don't be the person in your business, if you're going to run that business, to run towards the operations. You got to be the person who runs towards the sale. And what happens is, and we kind of talked about this a little bit on it, is that he's a salesman by nature. So he's just out there doing the sales. But so many people, when they start their business, they create all the excuses of why they can't do something. In fact, a shout out to Mason. Mason is a listener of the podcast and even became a client of ours here at ReminderMedia. And I was on a call with him last night. And he was speaking about this concept of, like I said, why aren't you making the prospecting calls? And he goes, it's just, the reality is you always just tell yourself, well, I can't make the prospecting calls if I don't have the logo. I got to get my logo. And that's the mistake that so many businesses make, instead of just going, look, you don't need a logo. You don't need those things. And then the second golden nugget that I took away from Mike McCann is that when he really looks at where his business is coming from, which is what led him to join up with Gary Keller at Keller Williams, the majority of his business comes from his relationships, comes from referral and repeat business. And the reason why I think that's such a massive golden nugget for everybody who's listening to this as you look towards 2021 is all the stats in every single industry will tell you that the majority of your business will come from your sphere and the relationships that you have. But watch your budget and watch where you put your time and energy. And I guarantee you, you're starting to focus too much of your time and energy and money onto new people, instead of actually going, hey, I'm actually going to focus on the 80, the 100 core people that really are going to generate probably the majority of my business. And it's a really hard thing to do in business, but here's a testament, because if you watch this guy's episode, you realize, yeah, it's not instant gratification, maybe right away, but in the long term, it can make you number one in Philly for 30 years.
Yeah. He's also incredibly consistent with his brand. And, you know, whether or not you think it's cheesy or whatever, Mike McCann, the real estate man, I absolutely love it. But he has been doing that since he started, man. Yeah. He owns it. Yep. He buys until he keeps using it.
Oh, and he had mentors. So the guy who, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, he had mentors, and that references Kevin Harrington's episode. Yeah. But he had mentors to where, like, he looked up to, I think it was Alan Dom. Mm-hmm. He looked up to Alan Dom and everything like that. I mean, it's amazing. The guy's number one.
Mike's episode is 149. So if you're looking for that episode, Mike McCann, 149. The next one that I've got is Peter Taunton from episode 165. So Peter was really kind of amazing. I don't know if we realized, we knew Peter's bio. Yeah. But I don't know if we realized until we were on the podcast with Peter,
who we were interviewing,
that this guy basically started the 24/7, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week gym, you know, stripped down gym that can go into a strip mall, right?
He's probably the most successful guest we've had on the podcast from a net worth standpoint.
Yeah, so he founded Snap Fitness. Now he owns Lift Brands, which has, you know, dozens of brands, but he's got 2,500 locations in Snap Fitness. And what he did was he really kind of shook up the model from these big gyms with swimming pools and tennis court or racquetball courts and stuff. He goes, wait a minute, all I need, because they needed tons of, you know, employees on staff. He goes, all we need are the equipment. I can put this thing anywhere. It has a small footprint. I can have a couple employees working 24/7 and charge a lower membership. And that kind of created this whole model of gym memberships. But really what stuck out to me from an interview perspective, from a golden nugget perspective, is not only the ingenuity there and his willingness to go all in with that and just be completely tenacious and incredibly ambitious in scaling these things, but was the leadership principles. He really, really focused on leadership. He probably has my favorite quote of all time from any podcast, where he goes, anyone can be an all-star if you set the bar at your ankles, which is such a great quote and something to apply in your life. If your goals are sitting there at your ankles, you're going to feel amazing about yourself all the time, but you're not necessarily going to be reaching your full potential. But when he talked about leading, he actually bought a failing gym from, I don't remember exactly who he bought it from, but this guy had a gym. He's getting rid of it. He's like, it's failing. He's like, well, I'll buy it. So he buys this gym. He goes in there, never owned a business, never was a manager before, meets the team for the first morning. He's like, this place is a dump. We got to clean this up. He gets everyone together. He starts dividing and conquering, saying, we're going to clean this place. First day on the job, an employee speaks up. I think her name was Barb. She goes, yeah, we don't clean. And he's like, at that moment, I had a decision to make. I could be soft right? And I could be like, completely understand. I understand that you don't clean. If anyone else has that concern, they don't clean either. Let me know. We'll talk about it. You can see the door on your way out. Go ahead. That's all right. He goes, well, then you don't have a job either.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In that moment. And like, we were talking to Peter and you're like, man, it's a really nice guy. He's so personable. As soon as he said that, I'm like, oh crap, he means business.
Yep.
And that's what his employees felt.
Yep.
And they all go, wait, this guy means business. Barb ended up staying on the team because of the next thing that he did. He started cleaning with them. He got into the trenches with the team and began cleaning. Not only that, he took the toilets. So getting in servant leadership, coming up alongside your team, doing the things you want to do,
golden nugget right there.
But also being that clear in your decision-making process when it comes to how to let the team know where you stand on something. I just thought was so powerful with him. And
take the toilets.
Take the toilet.
That's the hashtag.
He goes on to talk about failure and having patience and all that, and then really from a business perspective, how to scale, like how he scaled his brands and how he scaled his gyms and franchises. But it was like that leadership motivation.
No, you can follow him on Instagram. He's super motivational on Instagram. Obviously, great guy. But yeah, we didn't. I think one of the best parts about it was we didn't know who we were interviewing in a way. Like, we had done our research like we do for every guest, but we weren't totally understanding that he was the creator of these ideas of 24-hour fitnesses.
Yeah.
And it was just like, once we understood that on it, it's like weird. It's like almost like, whoa, we're talking to a legend.
Yeah,
right
I mean,
now.
you look Anytime Fitness, Planet Fitness, all of those gyms, like that came from any gym you see in a strip mall.
Yeah.
That came from his idea.
His concept. Yeah, it's unbelievable. So rounding out the top 3 of best principle or, principles I got, Golden Nuggets I got episodes. It's another Mike. The Mike's coming in with the wins for 2020. Michael Hellickson's podcast.
Incredible.
And I called it when I was on, and this is just for myself, is I was listening to him and just go and spit fire, basically. And I was like, I think this might be one of our best applicable episodes of all time that we've ever done. But Mike talks about really 3 things that you need. You need, in order to run a successful business, you need lead generation, lead follow-up, and lead conversion. And that's the number one question we get all the time on our podcast is, how do you generate leads? And you've got to be able to generate them. You got to be able to follow up with them, and you ultimately have to be able to convert them. And what I loved about what Michael talked about, and you've got to go listen to this episode, but he gave really tangible things that you can execute on to help you in every single one of those areas. Like your lead generation, you need multiple sources. And he talked about, I think it was like 21 sources of lead generation. And there's obviously thousands out there. He then talked about, hey, how do you actually follow up and how do you actually convert these leads? And one of the things he talked about is this strategy of doing a double dial plus a text message. And I'm not gonna, I'm gonna tease you with this strategy, but we've been testing it with our own sales team. And I've been now starting to get feedback as I'm chatting people, and it's working for them. This strategy of sending a text message to get people on the phone. So you got to go check it out to get that. And then on the lead conversion side, he talks about a myriad of different things, but one of the things that he pointed out was speed to lead, and that you're not the only person getting in front of this lead.
Yes.
And the studies, we all know the studies, everybody's heard them a million times about trying to be within 5 minutes. And he talks about just how you should go about trying to get in front of that lead, the mediums you should use. He walks through his principles of how he does it. It almost seems like overkill, but this guy coaches, and like he's a coach in the real estate industry, but he also does coaching in other industries. He coaches some of the most successful teams out there in real estate. So he's not the biggest coach, but some of the most successful people in the industry go with him. So it's really, really was an incredible interview, him breaking down the application of how do you actually generate leads, how do you follow up with them, and how do you convert them? Yeah. And it's just straight fire for about an hour. He said
the number 1 buyer of leads on Realtor.com this year has his speed to lead down to 16 seconds.
Unbelievable.
16 seconds.
Just unbelievable.
So those are our top 3 each. We also had some runners up. So I know we each had, we started with top 6 and we kind of pared down from there. But Brian Cassella, I would encourage you to listen to his episode. The one takeaway that I got from him was this idea of he would plant this statement in people's minds as he was calling them, where he would use this phrase of like if I want Luke, I'm trying to think of a good example off the top of my head, but if I was calling Luke, I want to do something, I would say, well, most people do this.
Yes.
Right. So instead of like trying to sell him and get him to buy something, I say, well, most people do this, take this option or something like that. And psychologically
There's something I
plants
use
people.
in sales. I go. I know you probably already know this.
Yes.
I know you probably already know this,
Of course
Josh,
I know
but,
that.
you know, most people.
I don't want to be the person to not know
Correct.
that. Right.
Exactly. So you're just planting these things. That's something I use in sales all the time.
Sam Bakhtiar was another one on my list, episode 143. Just from a mindset standpoint, he still has my favorite analogy where he talks about wasting time, how people waste time. He says, he goes, what's more valuable, time or money, right? You don't throw money on the ground, but you throw time away, right? You don't throw money away, but you throw time away all the time if you're not focusing on your calendar and being productive. Kristen Mashore was another one. She was episode 155. I loved her Facebook strategy, so she's someone to check out.
Yep.
Those are some of the ones from my short list. I know you had Peter Lorimer.
I had Peter Lorimer. That guy is a freaking stud, especially when it comes to content. I mean, he's on Netflix and stuff like that, but the guy's a stud when it comes to content. It's all about quality. It's all about getting local. So you got to go listen. He's such a personality, too. Like, we didn't know who we were interviewing there either at the extent. Like, he's had, 50 hits or something like that?
He was a music producer.
Yeah, he was a producer. He's had like 50
number one hits.
Yeah, 50 number one hits. So incredible. Now he's a real estate agent.
Between the UK and the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he was a great one. Jared James was an incredible one.
Yep.
So really enjoyed his. The idea of visibility trumps ability is such a powerful concept if you can grasp it.
That's episode 193.
Yep. Finally got a long-term guy that tried to get on the podcast. Finally got him on.
One of your fish.
Yeah, Kevin Moore.
Your whales.
Really appreciate Kevin Moore just because he's somebody that I've used his stuff in the sense of like I've coached people the stuff that I've learned from him and it's worked. And so that I always appreciate that when I get someone on. And he talks a little bit about this mindset of, hey, in order to be a pro, you've got to have a mindset of a pro. And most people have a mindset of an amateur. And most people don't want to be Tiger Woods, but they don't want to get out there and putt 300,000 times, right? Type idea. Yeah. And so, I mean, it truly is.
Pros train because they have to. They know that that's the real work. Amateurs train when they want to.
Yep. It's like this Kobe Bryant story when he took that shot and he missed in the championship. He came back and I think they got in the morning, early in the wee hours of the morning, and he called the high school gym person he knew and asked him to open up the gym, and he shot that shot he missed all night long, the night he came back. And so that's the difference between an amateur and a pro. Yeah. He's a pro.
Yeah.
You know.
Tell you, man, if you miss that sale, like, what are you doing? What are you doing for the next one? What are you doing are you just kind of saying, chalking it up to another loss, wallowing in it, saying sales is hard?
Well, Jared Glant, now I know he wasn't 2020, but same idea. He talks about, the problem with salespeople is it's called professional salesman.
Yeah.
And everybody drops the word professional.
Yeah.
Everybody just thinks you can sell because you're a chatty Cathy or you're personable.
I'm going to throw one more bonus episode in here. This was not in 2020, but I've been seeing some comments on some of our YouTube videos. People are saying, like, who is Steve? You guys have to eventually mention it because we talk about people in our lives. Like everybody knows who they are, right? So there's actually two Steves that you might get. There's a Steve and a Steven. Steve Acree is the CEO and the founder of our company, ReminderMedia. His episode where we get to interview him was absolutely fantastic because he is not someone who opens up a lot and shares his story. He's a driver. He's like, I don't need to talk about the past. Let's go towards the future. But we got to interview him on episode 100. So that was technically 2019, but I wanted to bring him up. Stephen Acree, we've interviewed him a couple times as your brother.
Yes.
And this is the agent who started about 3 years ago. Yep. You got him to start real estate and have continued to coach him throughout his career. And he's started at, was it 30 homes the first year, 72 the second year?
This year I think he'll hit 200. Year. We'll see where the year ends up.
Yeah, those are the two different Steves. So Steve Acree is our founder. Yep. Stephen Acree is the real estate example that we use all the time. So I wanted to clear that up for everybody and also call attention to those interviews. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Golden-est Nuggets of 2020. Head on over to Stay Paid Podcast for show notes. We're going to include links to all of those episodes. So
would these be considered the platinum nuggets?
These are the titanium, uranium, the unobtainium nuggets. Unobtainium nuggets. What was Captain America's shield made out of? That's what I was trying to think of.
You're asking the wrong person.
All right, we need some.
I feel like I would be asking you that.
Yeah, seriously.
You want me to fact check it real quick?
Yeah, fact check it.
Head on over to staypaidpodcast.com. We're going to have all those links to these episodes. And if you're looking to support the show, we really appreciate it. There's two ways we ask you to do that. First is to head on over to Apple Podcasts, drop us a 5-star review, and leave a comment. And the other way is to tell a friend about the podcast. We are going to end this with our final holiday dad jokes. We had some the last episode, so we got a couple more. These are reindeer themed. Which reindeer loved to clean? Comment. Which reindeer needs an attitude adjustment? Rude off. Because he's rude. All right, if you want to get a hold of me or Luke, you can email us at podcast@remindermedia.com. You can find us on Instagram. We're at Stay Paid Podcast. Have a very Merry Christmas. Spend time with families. Enjoy this holiday season. Make sure that you continue to take tips. Use some of these golden nuggets in your marketing, in your sales, in your business, heading into next year. We really appreciate all of the love and the support that you have shown us here at Stay Paid over the years. For this episode of Stay Paid, I am Joshua Stike.
And I'm Luke Acree. Is this the last episode?
I think we have one on New Year's Eve.
Okay, we have one on New Year's Eve. All right, so I'm going to encourage all of you, right, is the one thing that you can do from this, besides go listen to all these incredible episodes, is share Stay Paid with a friend. We really appreciate that. You can tell from these golden nuggets, these titanium nuggets, as Josh has said, that you're getting out of it, that we're trying to bring you the best of the best to give you applicable advice that you can apply to your business. So share this with somebody else. Give this to somebody else. We would greatly appreciate it. Remember, the difference between a top producer and a mediocre producer in every single business is top producers take action. So take action on that today.